The Asbestos Safety and Eradication Act 2013. So what we're talking about is the Act, and also looking at asbestos and the legislation, how that is controlled, and we'll go through one of the asbestos reports in part 2 of the series. So let's look at the bill. So the bill was introduced on 1st of July 2013. Now, from the Asbestos Safety and the Eradication Agency, they were formed out of this bill. So this is a little bit of a background of asbestos and working the impacts of what's been happening in the building industry, where asbestos had been used in roofing and building products over a number of years, and from the white asbestos has caused an impact on people that are doing renovations and builders. So by having poor maintenance and disturbing the fibres has got into people's lungs, and it's a terrible disease to have, that's for sure. So with the regulation of asbestos has been a little bit low over the last couple of years. Under the Workplace Health and Safety Act, there was a management system that went in for managing the health and that of asbestos, and the purpose of this act is to help people to the removal of asbestos related products in Australia. So underneath the Workplace Health and Safety regulations, we need to have an asbestos register on site for buildings before 2003 to make sure that that's been identified. So what we can look at here, so here's our contact details. You can talk to either us or Sydney about this with any of your inquiries. So what we'll do now, we'll look at one of the asbestos reports. So this is a asbestos report, a sample for a building that's been done. So basically you're looking at the areas of the complex to work out if there's any asbestos in each of those areas and what samples have been taken. So this is for a body corporate, so it's 27 residential units, and also there's some commercial properties in there at the time, and the asbestos has been identified in the roof sheeting. So we'll have a look at here. So our first section we're looking at is the driveway. There's no suspected asbestos in this area here, so we're only looking at the concrete driveway. Okay, so in the main building here, they've got rendered walls. There's no asbestos that's been suspected in there. Now we can see in here we're looking at the fibro roof panels and also the bars sections in here. So there's been a sample that's been taken to identify that there's asbestos in that building from there. Now asbestos is alright if it's in good condition and it's tightly bound. So there's the two samples that have been taken. Because it's tightly bound, that's most of the particles are encapsulated inside the in the panel, so there's no risk for that to get out and to be airborne. Once you start cutting this sort of stuff, then that's when things start to the risk goes a lot higher. Okay, external access ways, so we're looking at mainly timber work. Sometimes you get vermiculite underneath the bottom of your stairways here, and also some of the piping, and also around the outside pits from the plumbing there. Switchboards. Now the older style switchboards usually have asbestos in there in their compressed backing. Your boundary fencing, so this is timber, so that's fine, but at least that way that identifies where the impact is in this building to manage that. Asbestos management for strata and commercial buildings. This is part 2 of the series that we were looking at before, where in part 1 we were looking at the Asbestos Safety and Eradication Agency. So that's the agency they put in for getting rid of the asbestos in Australia, so that's the main agency that's looking after that. But what we were going to go into was the management for the commercial buildings and the requirements that in there, and then we'll go through the other report a little bit later on. Okay. So any building before 2003 is required to have an asbestos register, and this should be reviewed once every 5 years to keep that up to date. That's where we're talking about the obligations under the Workplace Health and Safety Act. So whoever's in the control of the workplace is a responsible person and could be liable for not managing the workplace properly. So that's why we need to reduce the risks to the body corporate or the owners of the building to manage asbestos as well as safety hazards. Okay, so we need to make sure there's a asbestos register in place and a management plan to look after that. So that's, you can either contact Sydney or myself and we can help you out in those areas from there. So what we'll do, we'll go through one of the other reports and the other sections what we need to look at. Alright, so we were looking at the asbestos report, and then we were looking at each area and to see on how we can identify what parts in the building and to work out where asbestos sheeting is and how to manage that. So once we've got that in our report, that needs to be put into a register. So if we look in, so an asbestos management plan, so whoever comes to on site needs to be aware of the asbestos on site and what risks they're going to do what method they're going to do to minimise the risk so they don't disturb that asbestos. Also there is another document in here as well. Where did it go? No, it's not that one. Asbestos register, okay. So now it's gone. Alright, so whatever part of the building, so we're looking at that there. Okay, so that's the asbestos management plan. Now the other part of the register that identified where the asbestos was in the building and what condition it was in. So in that way you've got that full management of the site, so you know where the asbestos is and the contractors know about where that is. Alright, so if we go back to our other section in here, this is where we're talking about the asbestos register, so that identifies where the areas of asbestos is in the building. Now there's some parts in some of the buildings, in the older buildings, some can be in the paint. The little spaces have been put into the windows that hold the windows into place. There's also sometimes some asbestos in there that we've found, and also some asbestos in the paint. So it's quite amazing where that has been found, that's for sure. Alright, so once we've got those sections in there, so we're looking at having an asbestos register in place, so that's what we looked at just earlier on, and we've also got the contractor's management plan in place, so we know that whoever comes on the site, the contractors know, one, not to disturb it, and two, if they need to, if there is going to be any disturbance, then there needs to be adequate measures in place and monitoring so we don't upset the fibres, or we need to wet down the area so then all the material is encapsulated. So that should give you a bit of an idea on how the asbestos plan that goes together. So you can either contact Sydney or myself and be able to help you in meeting the requirements of the legislation.
We hope this short review was helpful. If you'd like to find out more, click the link below this video now.